Everyone, so here we are at week 6. We have 3 different exercises, all very much related to each other. The first one was just actually an in-class thing, so that's what we're going to do first. No one, it's not like a finished product like before. And it's about collaging together different files from different places. So rather than working all in one image, like you have been and just adjusting it and things like that, there's a lot of files in here that we're going to combine. And if we click on that, it's going to download a zip file. I did this on purpose because we need to learn how to work with zip files. So what happens is when you click on it to open it, it actually brings you inside the zipped file. And in case you don't know, in order to get stuff out, you actually just can right-click, copy. It might give you a warning like, you've downloaded this from the internet. Do you want it? And the answer is yes. The other thing that can happen is if you just double click on here and you just go inside, you'll see all this stuff, but you probably can't open it because they're technically compressed right now. That's another thing that zip files do. It compresses things. Different things will compress more or less. For example, JPEGs and PNGs are already pretty compressed. There's not anything more you can do, but other files make them compressed more. So you have to copy it to somewhere, maybe your desktop, maybe your folder to do with class. Um, there we go. So I'm going to paste it in here. There we go. And then when we go in, you're going to see that there's multiple files. I'm going to make these bigger so we can see them. There we go. So there's a JPEG, there's 2 PNGs, and then there's 3 PSDs. PSDs being Photoshop files, PNGs being one type of compressed file, namely things that start off as vector files can be exported as PNGs, and then a JPEG, which usually means things started as a photograph or as a PSD file and were exported that way. So you're going to start by opening up the one that says Tor. And we know these are old files from a long time ago because the name is typed out in all caps. But the idea here is to be having multiple things open and moving images between the files. So we're also going to open up the CD and the horn. Now, one thing I asked in class was, between these 2 images, which do you think would be easier to sort of extricate from its background? Which will be easier to get out of here and put in here? And a lot of people said the CD because it's a round circle. And you're not wrong that the CD itself is kind of maybe easier to get a hold of. But in reality, this one right here may actually be easier because the background is the part you're trying to get rid of, not the foreground, right? I can try and draw a circle around this, but in reality that might not work out so well because, just trying to draw with the ellipse tool, that's not that easy. Trying to select it, because this is a very dark black, it might work out. That might be why they actually chose this picture. But the background is actually kind of terrible. And this one, it's a flat white. This was actually a photograph of a French horn that someone, I don't think they took it in front of this white background. I think they already took it off of its background and stuck it on the white background digitally. So they've done some of the work for us. So step 1 oftentimes in getting things to work out is to start with the correct file. Or in this case, let's say you were making these pictures, shoot against a white backdrop as best you can, not whatever cinder block nonsense this is. Obviously this is also composited, but the concept still stands. Alright, so how to get rid of this? Well, we gotta unlock that layer so that we can actually have transparency. Can't have transparency when it's only one flat layer. And what tool to use? Well, we use the quick select tool a lot in some cases because it's really good at, there we go. We select that and it looks nice. But there's all this white in the background. And you don't do this, right? 2 reasons. 1, that's tedious and a waste of your time. There's better tools. And 2, unless you make your brush really small, you're going to get this nonsense, right? Where it's starting to take the French horn. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to use the magic wand tool. But we're going to turn continuous off. All right, and what that will do is select a whole lot of areas and then I can hit delete, and it's kind of deleted all of the areas all at once. But as I said before, I'm going to undo that. We need to make sure we're not taking out parts of the French horn. Parts of it are very, very light. You can see this here. Your default setting on this, which is usually set to 32, that's too much. You can see it's punched a hole into the actual French horn. You can really see it over here. But you'll also notice that it's just kind of hard to tell what's going on. So here's one thing I do, and I do this both if I'm trying to cut things out of photographs or video. It's actually very helpful with video too. I'm going to make a new layer before I cut anything out, right? It's easier to do this beforehand. And I'm going to put it underneath. And I'm going to choose a really bright, ridiculous color that has nothing to do with what's going on here. So if this image is mostly yellows, greens, and blues, then I'm going to choose this fuchsia, like bright, very bright color, and I'm going to just use the paint bucket and fill that in. And what that's going to tell you is it's going to be much easier to find if I do this. Nope, wrong layer. Gotta make sure you're on the right layer. There we go. If I do this and I hit delete, right, now I can definitely see where things have gone wrong. So I can set this. We've actually found that like 5 is not a bad number. Whoops, gotta go back further. If I do that, and then also I turn off, I hit Control D to like turn off the selection. And then the other thing I'll do is I'll actually kind of move it around. Because if something's in the wrong spot, you can sometimes see it a little bit better if you're moving it, and you'll go like, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. Alright, so that's one way to know how things are working. And that's how we tell where the holes are. But there's another part to this. And that other part is how it's going to composite on the new image. And obviously with this, you can see all these jaggedy edges that look really terrible. Don't go through erasing them just yet, because remember, what you're actually compositing onto is this. This is mostly a very, very light gray. So the other thing I can do to test things out, it's a little bit silly for something this simple, but if you have something that's taking a while, it's not a bad idea. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to choose like a light gray that's similar to what we're going to be working with. And I'll put that in there. And lo and behold, it looks a lot. Let me put it back to 100%. So that looks pretty nice, right? This, you can see the obvious outline, but that isn't the purpose of the purple. It's just to show you what you're punching through. This looks okay. I could even try slightly darker grays to see at what point it becomes a problem. And the reason we do that, whoops, there we go. Even that's not so bad, and that's darker than most of what's going on over there. If we were zoomed in, we could see a little bit of the white now, but that you're not going to be that zoomed in. So we do this because it doesn't matter if there are jaggedy edges if you're not going to see them. And what happens a lot is that people will like zoom in and they will start erasing, and I've done this before, and it's useless. All right, so now how to move this from one place to the other. Unfortunately, what we discovered in class, as I was saying it, my bad. Let's say I was to drag select the whole thing and say Control C for copy, or actually no, there is no right click copy. If I go over here, it works on mine. It won't work on your computers at the school. I'm not sure why we had a problem, but of course that's what happens. I try to break it, it works. I try to make it work, it breaks. We were not able to copy paste from one file to the other in the computer lab with the exact same files. It could be that I have an older version of Photoshop and maybe they have taken that away. The other way to do this is to use the move tool, and I'll do this a lot with because it's just kind of quicker. But I'll click and drag this up here until the other picture shows up, but I haven't let go yet. You have to drag it in here. You'll see that the background had this white border around it. That's how it's like, you know, this is where it belongs. Like it's gonna go here. And make sure you drop it somewhere visible so you can actually work with it. All right, so copy paste if you have an older version of Photoshop. Otherwise, use the move tool to simply drag it to a new location. Um, One last thing about this image. I said before, like, oh, this is a good image because it's on a white background, it'll be easier. But obviously there's one thing wrong with it. It's pre-cropped. So this exercise was set up by the people teaching it to like have everything be the same size. So there's, you know, the idea being there's not much choice in where you put stuff. But in reality, there's also not much choice because it's cropped off here, here, and here. So even if I was to make it smaller, right, if I was to tell my move tool to show transform controls, because I wanted to do something different, I would run into trouble. I would have to put it like over here or something because it's gotta not show the fact that it's missing a mouthpiece and half the horn. You have to hit enter when you're done transforming, by the way. And actually, it's also, I think, you can't really tell, so that doesn't matter, but it is a little cut off on the bottom. So that's another reason you have to make sure you grab the right pieces, is because you need to make sure they're not pre-cropped. And if they are, you have to start getting very creative with how you show things. So that's one thing to look for, right? Going between your images. The other is that, so I had this CD, and that was originally part of the exercise, and I didn't like the background, so I went looking for other stuff. And there's two types of images, you generally speaking, you can find, right? One of them is the stuff on a place like openclipart.org. And these are all vector shapes. We worked with them when we were in Illustrator, and you can continue to work with them in Photoshop. You can bring these in as PNGs. This is one type of idea, but honestly, it's not going to really match with this other stuff. This is a photograph. This is a photograph. So when looking for stuff to work with, nope, there we go. You may need to, find stuff here that are actually photos, remembering to always put, there we go, the license on. The other thing I changed, of course, if you were looking at the images, is that instead of a CD, I went with vinyl because there were better pictures, frankly, available. So that's why they're what the JPEG and raster are. I keep going to file, right-clicking and then saying edit because I purposely set my computer for edit to mean Photoshop. Yours may not be set up like that. So then it's just a matter of deciding which of these looks you'd want to use. The other thing is that PNGs are compressed files, but they can come with transparency already built in. If I start with this PNG of a vinyl record and I drag it over here, there's literally nothing I have to do. Although this shouldn't be there. But whoop, oh. There we go. We're going to transform that. It's already in there. That's it. Done. I didn't have to take away. Someone else did the work for me, and they did quite a nice job, I have to say. I could probably put whatever color I want behind this, and it'll look just, fine. Right? So, oh, that is cut out. It just happened to be over a white spot on the other piece. So this is all done, right? It's already made for you, and that's not cheating. Is to find images that already have, that you are legally allowed to use, that already have transparency built in them. That's not cheating. That's just being smart with your time and resources. Likewise, this one is pretty well set up. It's a very white background. It's not going to be too hard to get. I'm going to turn that up, though, because I happen to know that the outline of this is still that light gray color. Even that, and catching that might be a little bit hard, because it'll show up. So I just happen to know that if I bring this over here, because we did this before, it's also the wrong size. It starts to show up a little bit. So you have to really kind of choke in a little bit, depending on the color of the background. I'm going to use my free transform, which is Control T. I'm holding down Shift whenever I do that. And I'm making sure I don't drag the whole image off the page, because then I may never see it again. It could get lost. But by the way, when you're transforming things and you're like, oh my gosh, this looks so crummy, wait till you hit enter before you panic. It's not that it looks crummy, it's that the free transform is like it's only like a preview. The other thing that happened is I missed that. So I would just have to go in. And I could see that over the white. You just can't see it well, so I'm just doing it like this on the computer. But you can see that it's there. Looks gross. So make sure you're being careful. But basically, the edge of that image didn't get erased. And it's hard to see. Although I'll bet if I... No, it's not hard to see. So this is, again, why I would... Whoops, wrong layer. There we go. Now I can get rid of this easily. I'm using an eraser to get rid of this. I'm also holding down shift, so I can actually like be all the way over here, and it's only going to erase in a straight line. So it makes it a lot easier for me to erase that. All right, but for this particular in-class assignment, if you were making up this work for me, I didn't particularly care about like the composition of this picture. I just wanted to see you put the various pieces in here and have them be cut out properly. So make sure you're not leaving that, right? So make sure you're getting rid of that. There we go. That looks much nicer. And again, you know, same with this. Make sure you're not having holes cut out of it that I can see through. And just save it and submit the PSD for this. That will be fine.